what are some of the patterns and challenges that you have seen in your clients as when it comes to talking finances with their kids?
So in terms of talking finances, they tend to avoid it a lot. They think it's more complex, the kids might be, depending on the age.
Hi, welcome to the Moments with Michelle. If you just happened on this page, I hope it's a really good happenstance. I like to say it's a place where we share information, we try to help each other out. And so today we have the beautiful Dr. Natalie, and I'd like her to tell you a bit about herself to get this conversation rolling. So good morning, Dr. Natalie, and if you can just lead us off in this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be on Moments with Michelle. Thanks for the invite. So yeah, I'm Dr. Natalie Apparicio-Farrell. I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, lovely Twin Island Republic in the Caribbean. My background, I'm a physician by training. I graduated from University of the West Indies in 2005, practiced for a number of years as a family doctor. And then when I got married, my husband is Canadian. I ended up closing my practice, transferring my patients to my colleague, and then I migrated to Canada, December 2011 in winter. So yeah, so it's been a journey transitioning as an immigrant in Canada. I explored a number of other career opportunities because as a foreign medical grad, you have to be able to pivot because you can't practice medicine actively here. So what I ended up doing was pursuing my MBA. I got an MBA with honors at the University of Massachusetts. And then from that experience, because I love math from childhood, it kind of sparked that again, doing the business, math, finance. I just dive further and further into finance. So now as a financial consultant for over 6 years now, and I work with families, high net worth families, particularly healthcare professionals and business owners, helping them solve complex situations. And my career background as a healthcare professional allows me to encourage my clients to have open conversations, difficult conversations. And so, yeah, it's a pleasure just transitioning and bringing all of that experience to my wealth management practice.
That is fantastic. I think you have a very interesting career story, if you will, because you've come from the medical side and now you've taken that. And I like that you said that you could encourage your clients to have open conversation. I imagine that having the medical background, you're able to say, you're able to have intelligent conversation with them if something were to come up because it's your field. But I also like that you mentioned about the family part of things. And so this is for our segment today, we want to look at the family finances and how you as an advisor help your client to have the conversation with their kids, whether it's Canadian kids or whether it is from the West Indies. I'd like if you can address that in a twofold way, if you will. Let's deal with Canada first, and then we segue into the West Indies.
Yeah, okay, cool. So definitely for families, I deal with multi-generations, right? So most times it's the parents, and then I can kind of manage the grandparents and then the kids or grandkids, if you will. And so with families, we try to explain to them that, having those conversations early on normalizes finances, just like brushing your teeth every day, just eating every day, just having those conversations around money as a family helps to normalize it. And doing that early on with your kids helps to build their confidence, right? And their understanding of what money is. And so I work with families to address just the baseline finance and money conversation and then being proactive. So that's another thing. So life evolves and, my healthcare background, I said, people could be alive 1 minute and next minute you get a cold and crash and you're there doing CPR trying to revive someone who has passed away suddenly. So I let my clients know, please have these conversations around your will, your assets in Canada and overseas for those who are immigrants who have assets overseas as well. And then determining, your power of attorney, who's going to be managing, should your mental capacity change at any time, and your capability change to manage, who's going to do that? So having those things in terms of risk management as a family too. So sometimes if you have more than one child, you would see the differences in personalities between the children. So you're not going to put them to, execute things jointly, right? Because that could cause friction. So you have those conversations about, maybe separating roles and, just being transparent about that, who's going to get what ahead of time. And then that just allows things to go smoothly as an advisor as well.
That is fantastic. You know what? As you were speaking there, and I heard the conversation about having the power of attorney, etc. That is really, really quite critical, by the way, because a lot of times people don't understand that even something as simple as going to the bank and getting some money, the power of attorney would help because maybe that person could talk, but maybe they can't sign, or they're not physically able to go to the bank to make a withdrawal. Let's say we're not even talking about the investment side. I'm just simply talking banking, and then they find that that becomes an issue because they don't have these things in place. But one of the things when you were talking that came to my attention, it kind of captured my kind of interest is that. On the part of children, how do parents take care of making sure that if something were to happen to them, that their kids are left in someone that they trust
Yeah,
care.
yeah.
And I think that's so critical. So when you're having conversation with your clients, do you bring up the conversation about having a trust for a like a guardian? Let's put it that way. I don't want to say trust because that's a different connotation. But if
Yeah.
you have that guardianship conversation with clients who has little kids.
Yes, definitely have that from early on, even in terms of critical illness insurance, disability insurance, just insurance that will protect them too. So if the client becomes, disabled and have to take time off from work, how are they going to take care of their kids just while they're alive? And then also in critical illness, if they, become ill with some heart attack, stroke, any of those critical illnesses that occur where you survive for more than 30 days, are they able to take time off to recover, and how would that impact their kids as well? So I do, like personally, I take out critical illness on my kids as well. So there's critical illness for children because we know cancer is more prevalent. Things happen more and more. My mom passed away in 2021 from leukemia, something I never thought would have happened. So you do have younger and younger people being diagnosed with cancer. So just having those conversations about, if you were 40s, which I do have a close friend who was in her 40s, a business owner who just was diagnosed with breast cancer during the pandemic, and they have two young kids. So how do you position that conversation in terms of guardianship? By definitely letting them know, these from a medical perspective, I put it in front of them, like your health can change at any time. And so it's important for you to think about these things and think about also your values because yes, someone might be good in terms of managing money, but also what do you value, right? Would they train your children or, guide your children in the same way that you would? So, guardianship could be both financial management, but also in terms of the family value system, who would pass that on as well to your kids. So,
You know what? That is interesting that you talked about the family, the family and the value that that family may have been, bringing up their kids in, and then to have that, to you lose your life, meaning that your kids now exposed to something else or someone else that may not necessarily have the same values. I think that's a really interesting one, and something that a lot of advisors and even for myself may not think about. You just know that you want to have someone that will take care of the kid in your absence. Someone called me the other day, and it's a family member, and out of all of the family members, she, thought that if something were to happen to her, there was a little bit of a scare happen. Thankfully, it all turned out to be negative, but it was interesting that in that moment she called me to say, "You're the only person I could think of," and would you be willing to? And of course, I've raised all my kids already, but I didn't hesitate because I recognize, just like you were saying, it that person saw myself in the same vein. And if you're up to it as the person on the other side of the fence, not the parent, the
Mhm.
person who's been asked to be that guardian, take a look and make sure that you're honestly assessing, can you do this? Does,
Yeah,
are your values aligned? Do you have the time? Are you able to commit to this? Because it's important, because it's going to mean, a matter of how that child's life is going to go
yeah.
eventually. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think it's an interesting one, and one that we should often have, that I think it's not really part of the conversation. So that's really good to know. What are some of the patterns and challenges that you have seen in your clients as when it comes to talking finances with their kids?
So in terms of talking finances, they tend to avoid it a lot. They think it's more complex, the kids might be, depending on the age. So if the kid is young, they think definitely they're not going to really start it too early, they're young. If those that more willing to talk about it are like if the kid is now going off to university, so now they have to, to be away from home, they have to manage budgets, and then be more responsible as young adults. So I think that's a group of clientele with those age group kids tend to want to reach out more to get help. So we talk about budgeting, helping the kid start a budget and sticking to that. We talk about also in terms of letting them know the needs versus wants, right? Because when in university, you kind of have a tighter cash flow, so you have to know, what should I buy with the money that I have, the allowance that I have, and then just setting goals. You're here for a period of time, completing your studies, just kind of focusing on short-term goals, long-term goals, and just working with them and that. And some clients, those who are high net worth, who have that capacity, they might start a tax-free savings account, support them in starting that, so that even if there's an emergency that comes up, their child is able to kind of withdraw from the TFSA as a backup plan. So it's just different perspectives. For the younger ones too, I tend to encourage them to, maybe start like a jar, that money jar or the envelope, right? And
Yeah,
you kind of label it up. I'm saving this, I'm spending this, or I'm donating, because I do a lot of charitable giving strategies with my clients as well. So
yeah,
just setting that up and, just encouraging their kids to, if you do a task, paying them for it, depending, some people have different viewpoints on paying children for tasks, but those
yeah.
who are okay with it, just encouraging them to show them how to do that and put it in their jar when they reward them with completing their tasks. So that's one of the ways that I encourage them to talk
I
about
like that.
them.
I think it's fast. I think it's fantastic, when because it's more than just giving them money to do. I guess I understand if someone is saying, "Well, I don't want to pay them to just do some chores. They're supposed to do chores." But I think it's more about the discipline around
Yeah.
it. And when you mention that people, clients that tend to reach out when their kids are going to university, do you think that it's too late? Because from where I'm sitting, I think we should start really early to give them a sense of, financial literacy. So, do
Yeah.
you think when they call you at that time, when the kids are headed to university, do you believe that's too late? And, if so, why?
Yeah, and it depends on when they became a client of mine too, right? So some clients and clients that come across, they would have
Mhm.
had a certain mindset before. So it's all about turning them into that mindset of being proactive. Um,
Mhm.
Proactive, I like to advise and educate. So I have seminars and webinars, and I also do like financial literacy modules for my clients and for different organizations. So those who are like from early on, their kids are young, I'm able to start the RESP and kind of get them involved. But those who came across, it's about like changing that mindset and saying, okay, I want to meet your kid. I want to meet them. I want to know what they're doing, what they plan to study for university, even from a medical perspective, just being proactive for mental health and wellness and study skills and all of that stress of university life.
Yes.
Just having those little conversations with their children. So that's where it depends on at what stage they join my practice, that I'm able to be more proactive. But if it's later on, I just try to at least connect with kid who's already a young adult and just talk to them about TFSC at the first starting point as an investment, and then
Mhm.
about goals, just setting goals and being very strategic with that, and then just I have events where my clients can bring their spouse or, the families can come to that, like summer events. So that's where I'm able to meet multiple generations and then have conversations and build relationships. So just changing the mindset, changing the conversation one step at a time. And that's how I do it.
That's awesome. I like the part where you talked about building the relationship, but having these events that you get to meet all of the generation. Because one of the things I always used to tell people and advisors and um, and colleagues as well is that when we can't afford in our capacity as advisors, we cannot afford to be transactional because I've seen that end up really poorly when the person for example they may pass on, they just got a spouse left or they've passed on as just the kids, they're adults, but because we never take the time to develop the relationship with the family as a whole, that money leaves us,
That's
right?
true.
Because they're going to go where they have that relationship with. So I think it's important that you're doing this so that you can get to meet with the kids and meet with everybody
Yeah.
possibly, right? I hope you're taking the opportunity to tell them, oh, bring a family friend along or whatever the case may be, because that's an even bigger generation.
Yeah, that's good. I do a lot of that, like women and wealth. Women would always bring somebody with them. So women and wealth would really bring a guest. But yeah, I think it's also because of that collaborative approach that I use from working healthcare system. We always have that team approach, the family and approach as a family doctor, right? I would see kids, grandparents, everybody. So I just use that soft skills that I have with relationships and just transition that into my practice. And I enjoy it. I enjoy knowing my clients beyond just their money, like who they are, what they love to do, their hobbies, their values, their goals, their dreams. I really enjoy that part of it, the
That's
relationship.
fantastic. I think if you're an advisor and you're not a people person, well, then you're in the wrong career because I think there's so many fascinating people out there and there's so many fascinating stories. I always, I've mentioned this story before, but I'm going to mention it here. I remember as an advisor at Scotiabank, there were clients, elderly clients who used to have, hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank account. And
Right.
as an advisor, I was always puzzled. Why do they have this much money? And you couldn't convince them to move it into an investment. You couldn't convince them to move it into a GIC, even a GIC, right?
Right.
Which I'm not a big GIC fan, but you couldn't even convince them to move it. But what I did, I took the time to understand them. I took the
Wow.
time to have conversation. And what I realized, the common pattern was all of these people came up during the Depression. They were in their 80s. There were kids then, and they saw when they had to go without. And so for them, being able to go into the bank and update their bank account and see that money there was pure relief. It was a safety, kind of a safety net, if you will. So I then had to do, in developing that relationship, in understanding them, in getting to know those stories, I was then able to present a solution, which meant, yes, I can put you some GIC and you come to me every month if you want to and have an
Right.
update printed out for you, because
Yeah.
that's what gives them the reassurance. So that's fantastic. Yeah, I know we're not going to really talk about um, products because to me products is the last part of the conversation, but I'd like to talk a bit about account types and how they benefit people with family. So we can start from the top, like do you think having a cash account, how does that benefit a family? A registered plan, a tax-free savings, which I heard you mention before, and are there anything else? Are they conversations that families should be having around or should be aware of around registered disability? So if we can just kind of touch base with that a little bit.
Yeah, we can. Okay, so the first one, which is tax free savings account, I usually say it's one of the early investment accounts everyone should have once you're over the age of 18 because it allows you to grow that money tax free, right? You don't get a tax deduction for it, but at least you can grow that money tax free. And it's almost like an emergency fund, I would say, to my
Mhm.
clients. You're able to, if something happens, you need to do renovations, you need to fix something on your car, you need to, take a trip, an extra trip for the year, you can actually take that money out and replace it in tax savings account based on your limits, etc. So that one
Mhm.
to recommend first. And then for the kids that are young, RESP until age 17, because you get advantage of getting that additional bonus from the government, that 20% extra matching, so that you can save up to $50,000 for your child's education. And once they're going
Mhm.
to, and it's expanded, right? So not just traditional university or college. You have other vocational programs. Once it meets a certain number of hours in the program, they're able to actually withdraw that and use that as studies. And so you can put
Mhm.
that in early and compound that as well, right? So that by the time the child is, university, college level or whatever, graduated and going on to some program, then you can know that at least you have like 2 to 3 years, depending on the cost, you have that already. So the registered education savings plan is one. Then for those that are working, the registered retirement savings plan, because that's tax deduction. Even for
Mhm.
home savings, that's a new one that's also tax deductible and the contribution to that. So even if you are a parent that wants to contribute to your child getting their first home, you know, encouraging them to at least take advantage of that because they can save up to $8,000 a year, up to a max of $40,000
Mhm.
towards that first home, and the government has also expanded the first time home buyer program up to $1.5
Mhm.
million because in the GTA you can't get nothing really much under $1 million. So, just that expansion allows more people to be able to still say, okay, I can use, that 5% down in the first 500,000 and then the rest. So it's about $125,000 using
Mhm.
money to just then buy their first home and gain equity in that, right? And then have a home equity line of credit that you can use for whatever additional investments that they were. For my business owner clients, who are high net worth, those who are very high income earners, who have the individual pension plan.
Yes.
So as a business owner, yes, you have RSP, but the individual pension plan, depending on the category of professionals who are high income, the IPP makes more sense because then you're able to save more
That's
in
right.
contribution limit. And then you can have shareholders, your family members as shareholders in the business. They too would have a pension plan as well. And so that's another very strategic account that's more for high income earners, but it's really a good benefit as well. What other accounts? We have the disability savings plan that helps with those who are disabled, they're able to save more than the regular account. So that's something that everyone who has a family member that's disabled should look into that because the government has specialized matching that's better. So I would recommend that as well. But I think that's the main ones in terms of tax deductions, because the non-registered is basically, you just pay lower taxes based on the profits that you make. So that's not really a tax deduction, but it's definitely capital gains that's lower. But that is on the fence now with what's changing with capital gains rules. So yeah, we don't know what will really happen with that, but that's something I'm keeping my eye on because a lot of the healthcare professionals and business owners I work with, they do save, in their corporations for their retirement. So that's really was a pain point with the announcement. So I'm just keeping my eyes on that particular strategy. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And you know what? A lot of times, and you mentioned the registered disability savings plan. And I think what is important to note is that it is applicable for kids as well.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are not aware of that and they don't take as much advantage of that as part of their planning. And I wish that it's something that advisors would incorporate a bit more into the planning because we've got a lot of kids now that are on the spectrum, etc. And those things could be, you do have to get some approvals, but to me, it's better to submit that, have the approval, and know if your kid is, if this is applicable to your kid, so that you could get those grants that comes with it. And I think that's an important part of the strategy as well.
Yeah.
So, what age specific tips do you have for teaching financial concept? I'm going to ask you. So I know you kind of sort of dealt with that, but I want to ask you for specifically young children 5 to 10 and then
Yeah.
tweets to teens and then we talk about young adults going off to college or starting work, so we're going to leave those out, but
Right.
young children 5 to 10, how do you really introduce the whole conversation and and have that discussion?
Yeah, I like the piggy bank. I grew up with a piggy bank. I love the piggy bank method. I'm biased towards that, but definitely the piggy bank method. It's fun. It's engaging. Um,
Mhm.
young kids love to get rewards, right? So doing different tasks, just being involved. And I know for my kids, when they have fundraisers at school, I would give each of them $10, and who comes back with, I see who's going to come back with money or not. If they're going to buy all of the goodies at school or not come back. So yeah, just giving them little allowances, starting off small, $5, $10, and kind of guiding them, showing them, that bit of piggy bank growing, and then rewarding them, like, summer break, if they have that saved over the school semester and they want to buy things to go back to school, you can take them shopping with you and have that budget in their piggy bank, that's their budget and what they want to spend on little nice little pens and crayons and books and colorful gadgets and things that they can buy for themselves with that money. And then even grocery shopping. So my kids go to the grocery with me. And so I compare. So I would show them, like if you have a box of orange juice that has 1 liter and a box that has 1.5 liter, what that cost is and how much will you get for that. Like, grocery shopping is more expensive now. And so just making them aware of the cost of what they eat every day. To that, I tend to take my kids grocery shopping with me. And then if they want to buy their own snack or their own little reward for doing good, then they have their little piggy bank that they can do that. Donations, I'm a big fan of charity and giving back. So I do involve those discussions of so for some clients they have to start up a given account which starts at $10,000, but just seeing the benefits of that and maybe having their kids involved in terms of the distributions of those funds. So you have the charities that maybe having their kids involved with animal shelters or homeless or just women shelters, just having them involved in that discussion about this is the money
Hmm.
in our family name. We have this fund, and this is how we impact our community in which we live and work and go to school. So maybe just having those little conversations would help
I
them
do like that. I
understand.
really do like that, Natalie. I like that you've taken the time to because the whole thing about financial education doesn't just stop at those, or put away some money, here's your budget. It does take into or should take into consideration how we use our money
Yeah,
in whatever capacity that we have, what little or a lot we have to
yeah,
influence and impact the community that we live, grow, etc. I like that you mentioned you take the kids grocery shopping. It's practical, kind of
yeah,
hands-on experience. And I recall there was a time, I don't get the chance to do this much now, and the kids that I did, they're grown now, but there was a time during the Christmas time, I would have the guys weekend and I'd have the girls weekend, and
yeah,
the age range from about for the boys they were from about 5 to I think maybe 11, 10, 11, and the girls
yeah,
were a little older. But what was interesting with the boys in particular, there was a 5-year-old, and I take him to the store and I said, look, you have one shot of picking something. We'll go to these toy stores. I said, here is the amount of money that you have to spend. And when we go to the store, you decide what you want. And it was interesting to see that each store we went to, because maybe one of them did not, it was about five guys. Maybe but the one store we went, two of them found their stuff, but three others didn't. And in
yeah,
each the store we went to, the poor 5-year-old, he just saw something else that he wants instead of what he picked before.
right,
And then he said to me, Auntie Michelle, could I get something else? And I said, no, you can't, because you have to stick within your budget. You've
right,
already said what you wanted and you spend that money. If you're changing, we'll forget about that one. We'll come to this one. And you could see the struggle on the face.
right,
And I think that's what really goes into our adulthood as well. And we have to remind ourselves that, yes, you know what, sometimes there's that thing. Could I get this one? But does it make sense? Is it in terms of sense to our pocket, book, our budget, etc.? Does it make sense? And I think it's a good. For me, looking back, it was my opportunity to do it over because I didn't do the same with my kids. So they're grown. So now I had the opportunity to redo this a bit and do it a bit differently. And you know what? It was very insightful, and you get to see that on the girls' side, a lot of times the parents of the girls would say, "I go to the store," and my kids will say, "What would Auntie Michelle do? Would she buy this, or would she look for a cheaper version on the rack?" Because yes, she will do that. So I want to ask you this in closing, kind of.
Mhm.
We've covered a number of things. We've covered, from budgeting. We've looked at a bit of products. We've looked at when do we teach our kids about the importance of finances and how to do their spending, etc., manage your spending. But are there resources that you could give to parents specifically for kids that they will say to their kid, whether it's a younger kid or a young adult just going off to school, whatever the case may be, if you're able to say, oh, watch this podcast, read this book, what are some of those? If we can end with that and your final thoughts, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay, yeah. So I think I look into the Mido app. It's powered by RBC, and that allows all of the family members to be on that app. And you can send money, you can track their task, when they get paid for tasks, etc. And that visual also inspires them to, want to save more and see, what the benefits are of getting that reward for doing their tasks. So the Mido app is definitely recommended. I haven't used the virtual bank, but there's also a virtual bank for kids online called Bankaroo. That one is also where they can do banking. And we have to get our kids accustomed to not using as much cash anymore anyway, right? Because now we have digital money that will be coming out, a lot of advances. So I think just using the apps and getting them involved in technology from early on with money and investing money will be very helpful for this generation. In terms of books, Vamsi has Smart Money, Smart Kids book that some clients have said is helpful. I think I don't know podcasts because I'm not too much of a podcast person, but definitely for young kids, that book and the apps would what I would recommend.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for that. If someone wanted to contact you, Dr. Natalie, what would be your contact details?
So definitely LinkedIn is the fastest way to get me. So you can see what I do, how I run my business and my practice and my span of work. So LinkedIn, and then my email would be natalie.apparicio-farrell at ig.ca. That's my email address. And the phone number is 416-967-2049. That's my office number, 416-967-2049.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So what we'll do, we'll also have that in the video. It will be all of that information will be lodged in the video, lodged in the comment section, so that anybody who wants to connect with you is able to do so. I want to thank you for joining me today. I think having these conversations is very necessary. It's you've been insightful. I do like some of the the information that you've shared, like all of the information you've shared. But in particular, I want to just give to you out there in the cyber world. I want to give you a few takeaways. One, it's never too early to start talking to your kids about money. You just have to understand your kid well enough to know how you're going to approach it, and you have to give them real world experiences, like taking them to the grocery store, as Dr. Natalie said, and just keeping them involved, and in particular, having them involved in things like, you're giving back to your community. What does it look like, and how are you going to fund that? And what do they need to do for their part? And for those that are going off to university, etc., because they're going to be living away from you, how do they manage that finance? How do they not have to rely on the bank of dad, but they rely on themselves in order to make sure that they can keep their monies to last them, whether it has to last them for 1 month, 2 months, a semester, whatever the case might be. If you're out there in cyber world and you have happened on Moments with Michelle, again, I hope it's a really good happenstance. We're happy to have you here. Today we had the distinct honor of speaking with Dr. Natalie, and we will post all of our contact detail. I think if you are a parent or not, or you're a grandparent, or you are thinking about becoming a parent, or you are that rich auntie and you want to take care of your nieces and nephew, I think Natalie would be a good person to reach out to. So thank you very much, Natalie, for being here today with us. And thank you all there for watching. We appreciate you.